Hi everyone, our presentation is on the integration of BYOD, otherwise known as Bring Your Own Devices for Classroom Learning. The presentation is being presented to you by me, Amber, Ann, and Patrick. In our presentation, we'll go over the following topics. What is BYOD, why BYOD in the classroom learning, and why educators should implement it for student learning, the pros and cons of BYOD, the reality in which we will address the current situation and challenges of implementing BYOD in the classroom, but BYOD activities that would promote student learning and development of tech skills, additional resources that educators can use to help them integrate BYOD. Lastly, we'll finish our presentation with final thoughts on BYOD in the conclusion. We'll now begin the presentation.
What is BYOD and what devices can be used for classroom learning? Other than being an abbreviation for Bring Your Own Devices, BYOD is an initiative that permits individuals to bring their own personal mobile technologies into a connected environment to use for work, school, or entertainment purposes. BYOD is also a policy that is implemented in many schools across the US that permits students to bring and use their own devices for educational purposes. So what devices might BYOD include? They include laptops, Chromebooks, tablets, iPads, iPhones, various smartphones, and a few iPod Touch models, as well as e-readers. However, educators should keep in mind that there might be some limitations to the digital devices for learning. For instance, some digital devices might be too old or outdated, in which some apps will not work or cannot be downloaded onto the device. When we think, so why BYOD and why educators are integrating them? When we think about BYOD, BYOD helps students develop knowledge and skills that will enable them to navigate information, media, and technology. Because nowadays, it is considered an important component of teaching and learning for today's youth, which will help them prepare for competing in a globalized society. BYOD also helps support students in educational activities in and outside the traditional classroom by providing teachers with opportunities to incorporate students' personal devices into the classroom-related activities. Also, by giving students the opportunity to use their own personal devices to access educational content on demand. Furthermore, the implementation of BYOD promotes lived experiences of educating students in a connected setting, implementation of new technologies through peer-to-peer collaboration, modeling digital age learning to support student success, actively managing student use if always on, and connected technology. It is important to remember that tech skill students learn and develop will be not only advantages to learning environments. The tech skills they develop will also be essential for future workplace and higher education opportunities, because tech skills are necessary when entering a technology-driven world dominated with various forms of digital age media and interactive tools, such as mobile tablets, smartphones, the internet, and networking.
Now we'll look at the pros and cons of BYOD and discuss the benefits as well as the challenges of implementing BYOD in classroom learning. When we look at the pros of BYOD, the first benefit of BYOD is that it's cost effective. Educators won't have to worry about there being limited resources in the classroom for each student, since students can bring their own devices to work with. Schools can focus on providing digital devices for students who really need it, therefore lessening their burden by cutting costs. Secondly, BYOD allows students to work with one-to-one technology. Students won't have to share devices, therefore there is no time restraint, access, or opportunity issues with digital devices for learning. Another benefit is that BYOD allows for individualized learning. When students have their own devices, students can download specific apps that fit their learning needs, which allows for differentiated learning and personalization. It also makes it easier for teachers to assign work that is tailored to their needs. In addition, BYOD offers learning support to students, such as language and content learning. Through BYOD initiatives, students can always be connected and have access to everything they need, such as photos, videos, and various apps. More importantly, students will always be connected online with their teacher and peers through Google Classroom or any other interactive engagement of cloud-based applications. therefore allowing students to access academic material and resources for learning and the ability to collaborate with their peers on assignments or projects, in which students can easily communicate and exchange information with each other. Now, on to the cons.
As discussed before, there's so many cons or pros with the BYOD initiative. However, there are some cons with it as well, which can be divided into two categories for teachers and students. For teachers, there's a lack of training and tech support and resources. Not many schools and as well as the community can afford such resources to start the BYOD initiative in classrooms. While students are able to bring their devices to school, there is also a concern over the lack of training by teachers. For example, in teachers' colleges, there's not necessarily a focus on integrating these technological resources into the classroom. Furthermore, another con for teachers is that there's a lackluster personal development workshops. So what this means basically is that while we do have tech workshops in the work field, they're very lackluster and they tend to focus on the pros of implementing technology in the classroom rather than how to implement them into the classroom. Furthermore, there's other cons such as not enough class time for technology integration, incompatibility. Different students have different devices. Therefore, we had to figure out ways to ensure that everyone has the same experience as the another, right? Another issue is potential legal issues. Students are bringing devices from home, and on these devices contain personal information, whether it's students' information or the parents' information. Once it reaches to the school grounds, teachers can potentially, and as well as students can potentially go through those devices should there be any concerns that arise. Lastly, another difficulty with the BYOD initiative is monitoring everything. Teachers do not have the power to monitor everything at once. Every student can do their own thing, and this is a huge concern because of things such as lack of integrity in the classroom, cheating, and frequent distractions in the classroom, as seen in the cons with the students. So now that we discussed both the pros and cons of the BYOD initiative, let's take a look at the reality of this situation.
So when we look at the reality of schools regarding implementation of BYOD, there's the issue of school policy restrictions. So schools may have policies that permit students to bring their cell phones to schools, but not all of them allow students to use them throughout the day. Therefore, students cannot always be on and connected to their peers or teachers. There is also limited usage in the classroom. This then depending on the teacher's knowledge and set of skills, there will be barriers to BYOD implementation. Again, such as the lack of training, support, and amount of class time for technology integration, and frequent student reactions, which we have all addressed in the cons section. Thus, BYOD initiatives may not be taken advantage of in classroom learning. Google Classroom, teachers who do integrate technology and implement BYOD tend to lean towards interactive cloud-based applications, such as Google Classroom, Grade, and PowerSchool, because they enable students to connect from individual devices and allow them to participate through wireless means. Also, students can receive prompt feedback on their assignments from teachers. Lastly, teachers' attitude and beliefs. Some teachers are more comfortable with technology than others, which allow them to easily integrate technology by implementing BYOD. Others may struggle and find it challenging, so they choose to teach without it, or may even hold personal beliefs or educational philosophies that learning occurs best without technology. Regardless, the reality is that teacher attitudes and beliefs will vary from one another. As a result, whether BYOD is implemented or not into classroom learning, it will depend entirely on who that teacher is, what their educational attitudes and beliefs are concerning today's students.
So with the COVID-19 pandemic, more and more students are using their own devices to continue their learning. However, as the pandemic is continuing on, we notice that there's some realities into the situation which has been revealed. First and foremost, there's a new evolved digital access divide. So prior to the BYOD initiative, the digital access divide referred to those who had access technology and those who did not. With everyone having more access to technology now and their own devices, the BYOD initiative has kind of created a evolved situation of this. So now that students have these devices in the classroom, there's more pressure on families to provide recommended devices, to provide those recommended devices. And essentially, it's a lack of equity or lack of equity for families that can afford devices. So to kind of explain it, essentially students with for example, a powerful device will be able to engage in their learning much more than the students who do not have such powerful device. As such, there's more pressure on those families who cannot afford it to upkeep with their child's learning by trying to find ways to purchase these powerful devices. Nevertheless, another kind of point about this digital access divide is that there's so many variety of devices that can be available, which can create kind of a compatibility issue. For example, what I put here is an iPad can do things differently from a laptop. Nevertheless, teachers and students have to find kind of alternate ways to participate in learning activities. And if they cannot find any other alternate way to participate, they would miss out on their learning essentially. Right? Another thing that's very important to take note of is that every student has different digital capabilities. Thus, it's very important that teachers need to teach students how to look through data, how to use the computer or whatever device they're using effectively and create meaningful usage of it, right? In the study by Adhikari et al., they looked at New Zealand schools and the BYD initiative. One of the biggest issues, as mentioned in the cons section, was pretty much class management. 17% of teachers spent more time with classroom management and teaching students how to effectively use technology, but also how to use it responsibly and efficiently, right? So furthermore, with this digital capability divide, there's also growing concern over the gap between parents and children. If teachers are teaching students how to effectively use devices, it grows their knowledge of such devices may grow even more than parents, and parents kind of concern whether they can control the child's usage of technology. For example, they won't be able to monitor because the child knows how to kind of go around that, right? So there's a lot more growing concerns over this widening skill gap that the BYOD initiative brings.
Next, we will now look at some BYD activities and ways teachers can implement them into the classroom learning. So one way of activities is Google Classroom, which has been mentioned before. And Google Classroom allows students to access Google Doc, Google Slides. Teachers can use Google questions or forms for example, reading comprehension questions. There's also Google Voice that teachers can use to communicate also with students' parents and much more. Another activity is using educational podcasts in which students can listen to podcasts on their digital devices. And some examples are they can use TED Talks daily, which is TED Talks conversations that talks on thought-provoking ideas in every subject imaginable in audio form. There's also another podcast is called Brains On, a science podcast for curious kids and adults. And these podcasts can easily be found on Apple's iTunes for free. And of course, students can also create podcasts using their devices to simply record themselves talking. A third activity is Kahoot, which is well known and used by many teachers, in which students can play quizzes that have been already made by other teachers with specific subject and grade level. or teachers can create their own quizzes catered to their own students specifically, and it can be used for educational or fun purposes. So some additional resources of ways that are implementing BYOD into the classroom include
On the left here, we have a website which pretty much explains to teachers how to implement BYOD in schools. One of the biggest issues that I mentioned in the cons section was that there's a lack of training when it comes to implementing technology into the classroom. On the left here, I have a website called Classcraft, and it gives teachers various ways to implement technology in things such as lesson planning, into collecting formative assessment, and whatnot. On the right here is a list of applications that was developed by the Peel District School Board of various applications that can be used on the online setting and as well as on children's personal devices. One of the biggest issues during the pandemic was just trying to find ways to integrate or to adapt current lesson plans into the online environment, and trying to find resources to help assess or to help assist with those integrations or those adaptations from in-class learning to online learning. Right. On this list here, it gives you several resources which are free, and it gives you recommendations on whether it should be used for early years, primary, junior, and even for if there's any usage for ELL students as well.
So some additional resources we included are some videos that we recommend. The first video is from Edutopia, and it's about how to keep kids collaborating remotely, even in the classroom through digital devices. This video is helpful because it shows teachers and how teachers can keep their students connected, communicating, and collaborating with each other through BYOD in the classroom. The second video we recommend is Station Rotation, Differentiating Instruction to Reach All Students. This video is about teachers who are working with junior or intermediate students and have limited access to digital devices within the school and cannot implement BYOD either. They should consider this particular activity, station rotation, as an alternative method or solution to the problem. This video explains how a teacher uses station rotations to differentiate instruction and learning. Lastly, we recommend a TED Talk video by Scott Widman, and it's called Technology, the Best or Worst Thing for Education. When it comes to integrating technology, there are benefits and challenges. However, as educators, we need to accept the fact that technology is not going to go away. Therefore, when we think about the environment, students will think about the environment that students will be entering. We need to ask ourselves, are we doing what's best for them? Whether you implement technology or not, we hope that this TED Talk will help you in making your decision.
Now that we've reached our end of our presentation, we'll go over concluding thoughts regarding BYOD. As a group, we discussed our thoughts on implementing BYOD in the classroom, and we came to a unanimous agreement integrating BYOD will depend on the teacher and their comfort with technology. As educators, we're all for implementing BYOD in the classroom because we believe that due to limited resources in classroom learning, BYOD offers benefits that reinforce learning and promotes the development of important tech and critical thinking skills. Therefore, the benefits outweigh the BYOD issues and challenges. However, we also agree that BYOD will only work with a specific group of students. Therefore, before integrating BYOD into classroom learning, educators need to consider their age, grade level, and their accessibility to digital devices. Some students might not own any digital devices because their parents might consider them too young, or their parents might not allow them to bring their family's digital devices to school for personal and various reasons. Therefore, BYOD will not work if the majority of students do not have devices or cannot bring their own devices. Regardless, K-12 educators are responsible for ensuring that today's students are ready to thrive in the high-tech global world. So if students have the digital devices, then educators should take advantage of it and provide students with endless opportunities to amplify their learning by creating and producing work that reflects their learning, lived experiences, critical thinking, and creativity. We'll now leave you some wise words with Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle. Thank you for watching our presentation. We hope you enjoyed it and learned more about the benefits of BYOD and how to address some of the issues and challenges concerning BYOD as you implement it into your classroom.